Welcome back to the Prosperous Nonprofit. I am very excited and honored to have with me today on the show Treger Strasberg. Treger, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, you are the founder and CEO of Humble Design, and I would love for you to tell us about your organization and the incredible work that you do.
I'm happy to talk about it. I founded an organization. It's called Humble Design, and we are based in 5 cities across the country. And in a nutshell, basically what we do is we furnish homes for families who are leaving homeless situations. And we do that with donated goods from the community. So we're solving a issue right now, which is the bridge between things that people need to give away and people who really need them.
I love that. And this is this what you set out to do? Like, what has your journey looked like? Did you set out to create this nonprofit organization to to do what you're doing now? Or like what was the path that led you here?
That's a very funny question because no, I I did not set out on a path for nonprofit. I always felt like I wanted to do something with my life that had meaning, and I think that it's just a common thread between humanity is that we want to have purpose and meaning. And I
Mhm.
was in advertising, and I'm not trying to slight advertising because it was my bread and butter, and then my family is a creative family that came up through advertising, but I just didn't feel fulfilled every day at my job. And so when I moved to Detroit, my husband took a job in advertising in Detroit, and we moved from Miami. And I decided that um, instead of going back into the workforce 15 years later after my kids have grown, just to volunteer my time. And I volunteered my time at a nonprofit to try and stay current with graphic design and advertising skills. And that was my entry point into the world of nonprofit. I quickly realized the landscape of nonprofit is in desperate need for professionals, and also the particular problem set that I was trying to solve for when I met my very first homeless family was that there wasn't anybody in the wraparound service industry that was providing furniture. So families who were
Mm.
leaving homeless shelters were sleeping on the floor. So when I saw that hole in the system, I had a crossroads. I thought, all right, well, I can either head down the road of nonprofit and try and make this, my focus, or I can leave that where it is and continue down the road advertising. And it was a real choice, and I made the nonprofit choice.
Yes. Did you feel like was that super outside of your comfort zone to kind of dive into this completely new venture? Or is this something that you have done in other parts of your life? Like, let's just dive into the unknown and see what happens and see what I can do.
So I like to think I'm adventuresome, but no, I didn't know what a 501c3 was when I started the nonprofit. And I guess that's
Mhm.
the gift that I gave myself in that moment was I didn't know enough to know enough that it was probably a huge hill that I was about to climb. So
Mhm.
the naive part of me actually was fantastic at that point because I was just like, let's do this. I have since, so I graduated with a graphic design and advertising degree from an art college. So no, nonprofit and like
Mhm.
management and logistics, which is my job now, was no part of that. However, as I went to the School of Hard Knocks and raised this nonprofit, I went back to school and got my master's in nonprofit management. So
Mm.
um, I think that no, I didn't have any idea what I was getting myself into. And I think a lot of people start nonprofits with like a great heart and that naive spirit, which is actually really lovely for what we're trying
Mm.
to do. Um, and uh, and if I had to go back and do it all over again, I would do it the exact same.
I think you're so I think you really hit on something because you're right. If we know too much, we're going to talk ourselves out of all the things. And I think about like when I started my business, same thing. Like I knew literally nothing, but if I had known all the things, I probably wouldn't have done it because I would have been too scared and I would have easily talked myself out of taking that leap. So I love that. And I like that you do it the same way. And I would imagine that there were like things that didn't go so well along the way, but you would still do it the same.
I mean, what better place to learn than on the job? real world experience. And I looked at every time that we fell forward, and there were many nights where I cried into my pillow, and we can talk about that. Like many nights where I'm like, it's over, I'm done, I'm out. So, I can't do this. And it wasn't that moment that taught me the lesson. It was the next morning that you get up and go back, and then keep at it. And we call it, in our company, we call it keeping your head down and your umbrella open, and just plowing forward.
Yeah. I love that. I feel like I'm in a little bit of that right now. And so what beautiful encouragement. I appreciate that. um, so one thing we love to talk about on here are, organizations that are doing things in new or disruptive or even entrepreneurial, creative ways. And I haven't seen another organization that is working to help families who are experiencing homelessness in the same way that Humble Design is doing. And so how did, you kind of talked a little bit about how the model came about, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about like the sort of creative process in here, because you are a creative. I would imagine that you identify with that. But yeah, I would just love to hear go a little bit more into the model and how you've really been able to change the landscape through this creative model, if you will.
Yeah, so I think that I did come at it from a designer perspective. I'm not an interior designer, but I'm a graphic designer. And so when the whole saga started because I was working at the nonprofit as a volunteer, and I met a woman who we became friends at the front desk, and she confided in me about 6 weeks into our relationship that she was in a homeless shelter with her and her 2 children. And that just about blew my mind because she had a full-time job and
Mm.
college degree, and it wasn't what I, in my mind, understood
Mhm.
homelessness to be. So I had to really change my life perspective in that very moment. And then number two, when we did finally move into the house, and I saw that she was sleeping on the floor where her kids and her were making nests with their winter coats of where they were going to sleep. I didn't want to just give her any furniture that came my way. I wanted it to be dignified, respectful, because she was my friend.
Mhm.
And so I think the overarching mission of Humble Design is to provide furniture, but really we're not. We could change our model and still be providing dignity and empathy. Furniture is just by the vehicle by which we do that.
Mhm.
So what we do for each client when we design their homes is we design it like we would design it for an interior design client or a friend. We want to
Mhm.
provide that empathy and dignity and say in your home environment that elevates the client and provider experience to one of equality. So when we deliver furniture, it's not the same model that's been done, for the last 40 years, which is just drop off a furniture bank, whatever is available. It really is a process by which we meet the family on a Monday. We get to know them, we talk to them, we look them in the eyes. We don't ask them questions about their social security or ask them about what government subsidies they're on. We just ask them who they are and what they like and what their children are like. And I think that shifts the dynamic immediately. And then when we deliver, which is just a few days later, and we ask the family to leave, and we bring in 10 volunteers, and we design the entire home. And we don't leave anything undone. We frame family photographs, we hang artwork, we put in electronics, we make the beds, we put all of the organizational components in the closets, we fill the kitchen cabinets. And so when they come home, they have a fully functioning home that not only is going to help them springboard into the next portion of their life, but it feels like it's theirs. It feels
Mhm.
like it's a reflection of them. And so the difference between our program and other furniture programs is that level of empathy and dignity that immediately the family feels a sense of permanence, feels that they feel seen and respected within their community. And the pride that is in your home is um, underestimated when we talk about recidivism back into homelessness. When you
Mhm.
feel like you are in a temporary situation, the chance of going back into a homeless situation, according to national statistics, is around 50%. Getting
Mm.
out of a homeless shelter is not the last step in the process. So when Humble Design comes in, and we've done about 10,000 individuals almost, we find that almost 99% of our families don't return into homelessness. And it is the furniture, but it's really the dignity and empathy behind that furniture and home decor. So I like to say our mission is delivering furniture for families who are living in homeless shelters, but really our purpose is to provide empathy and dignity for those who feel unseen by society.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just, like I was telling you before we started recording, I watched some videos of you and your team working with families, and I mean the emotion is so real, and it's incredible. And I mean, I think about my own experience, like when I create, a room in my home that feels cozy, and that feels like a space that I want to be in, I feel better. I feel more motivated. I feel more inspired. And so I imagine that trickle effect is huge. And so almost 10,000 people. That's incredible. Are there any particular stories or people that really stand out to you? I mean, you have 10,000 of them. I would love to hear if there's any that you can share with us, because I think, yeah, what you do is just so powerful.
Yeah, I think it changes. Like it definitely changes because I get to go down to the house. My job now is mostly in an office, but when I really want to connect and feel the mission again, I get to go down to the houses, which is a huge perk of my
Yeah.
job,
Yeah.
of being able to actually see the effort that we're making on the faces of the family that come in. So most recently, I am, I don't know if this is like a very generous title for myself, but I've been a motivational speaker, and I travel around and speak to large groups about why empathy and dignity are changing the landscape of homelessness, and how this concept should be implemented in other wraparound services. So when I speak, I don the motivational speaking cap, but I always felt this weird feeling of being an imposter, like there's an imposter syndrome there. And I
Mm.
realized the other day when I was visiting a client why that was. So we had a client who is 26 years old. She had an 11-year-old son. And one of the questions that we ask in our intake form is, how long have you been unhoused? So I didn't read her intake form. I had just come for the reveal and for the volunteer day. So when she came home and she started crying and she saw her son's room, I said to her, how long has it been since you've had your own space? And she's like, never. And I go, I know it feels like forever, right? And she's like, no, I've never had my own home.
Mm.
I've never had a door that locked. I've never not been homeless.
Mm.
Now, you can ask me all day about how I didn't make payroll in 2011, but I don't understand that level of commitment to overcoming obstacles. I don't
Mhm.
understand what that is. And so the reason that I feel sometimes that I am speaking from a point of privilege when I'm a motivational speaker is I will never be as motivational as
Mm.
our clients. I will never have overcome anything even close to as insurmountable as what they have to climb. So she was homeless her whole life. She was raised homeless. And then her son really liked the school that he was going to. And so she put her tent outside of the school, across the street from the school, so he could make it to school every morning. And she worked 2 jobs until finally she was connected with an apartment. And so when she saw her room, she was just like
Mm.
in tears. But when she saw her son's room, and she turned to the designer who was on the home at the time, and she said, it will never happen to him. It will never
Mm.
happen. What happened to me, I will never allow it to happen to him. And I think that those stories for me have opened up my eyes that this is an epidemic in this country that's coming down, whether we like it or not. And it is not just drug addicted, mentally ill individuals who are struggling with being unhoused. This is, 1 in 4 individuals in the United States are going to struggle with homelessness at some point in their life.
Wow. That's incredible to think that the impact of the work that Humble Design is doing, and the dignity and the empathy and the way that the organization is combating this issue is going to have a generational impact. Like, I love that what you said. She said, like, he will never experience this. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then we hopefully our impact is keeping families out of returning to homelessness. And whether
Mm-hmm.
that is because they work harder to keep the place because it feels like them, or whether it's because the amount of dignity and empathy that their community provides that has a ripple effect, whatever it is the combination, it actually is allowing more people to be helped by an already strained system. So when we return 50% of people who get into housing back into a homeless situation, it overloads our already overloaded system.
Mm-hmm.
So that I have a million ways which I think that we can combat homelessness in the United States, and we can go on and on with your local politician. But the most thing that I hear, the reflection that I hear back when I talk to people is, what can I do? What
Mm-hmm.
can I hear the problem, I understand the problem, but I'm not president, I'm not congressman, I'm not a senator, I'm not a council person. What can I do as a interior designer, lawyer? You know, I work in a grocery store. I am a postman. How can I help? And so here, Humble has created a system by which not only do you get to help and come down to the houses, but then you get to see one-on-one what your community looks like and how you can connect with people who really need you. And I think that's rare.
Mm-hmm. And you started in Detroit and you have expanded pretty significantly. Where else are you working now?
We're in Detroit, Chicago, Cleveland, Seattle, San Diego.
Wow. Are there plans for more expansion into more cities?
I mean, listen, I would love to be in every city. I think every major city needs this program. I think we should be the household name of donated furniture. I think every time you donate something, it should go to a family in need rather than being resold for a program you don't understand.
Yep.
And and I think that is the case. I think my dream is to grow exponentially. I have people around me who are making sure that we do that responsibly because
Mm-hmm.
I, like you said, like I fell forward into nonprofit. And now that we have 51 employees, we're in 5 cities, we have to be able to grow at a rate that's sustainable. And I think that the future is that we're in every major market. I think for right now, we're a test case. I mean, we do, in each city, we do about 3 homes a week. But we could, if we took in every person who was being placed into housing, we could do 100 families, like
Mm-hmm.
at scale. And like, wouldn't that be incredible if we could actually hit scale in those cities? So short answer is I would love to be in every city. Long answer is we're trying to figure out our strategic plan of how to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, yeah, there's definitely a lot of pieces at play that, it's easier said. Yes, let's be in every city, easier said than done. But I think that's incredible, the expansion that you've been able to do in the time that you've been able to do it. So to answer the question that you said, like, okay, somebody is listening to this podcast episode and they're like, what can I do? This is incredible, the work that this organization is doing, but I don't live in one of these cities. How can I support? Like, what can I do?
Great question. So once a month, I hold what's called a founder call. And I do a Zoom call with people who are in other cities other than the ones that you can volunteer in. And we have so many opportunities for you to either start it like I started it out of my garage and just help people. We have not cornered the market on helping people. So if you want instructions or how to, or a laundry list of what you might need to tick off, of things you would collect, and then how to call a social worker and find a family that would be in need of the service, we're so happy to help you walk through that. We've done the name Hometown Humble for those particular cases. If you're serious about bringing us to your city and really want to learn about how, and we have 10,000 square foot warehouse in each city plus, and we recycle about 9.5 million pounds of furniture per year. So it is a large logistics operation to get going in the city, but we have a plan for it. So if you're really serious about bringing us to the city, then we can talk you through like what it would take and how that evolves, and then eventually I fly into the city and meet everybody. So I would suggest that everybody on this call or everybody who's listening, either come to the founder meeting and sign up for the founder meeting at humbledesign.org, or listen, we can't survive without donations. So if you want to see a one-to-one result for like what you're giving, especially around the holidays, we spend every dollar on programming. I mean, it is just a logistics acrobatics of how to get all this furniture down to the families, and it really does make a difference. So we steward every dollar really carefully.
I like wrote this down. We have not cornered the market on helping people. Like, I love that because I feel like sometimes in the nonprofit space, there is like this little bit of competitiveness because it feels like funding is scarce. And, I don't know. I have definitely felt a bit of a competitiveness in the nonprofit sector before and similar, when people are working similar industries. So we've not cornered the market on helping people. So good.
We're gonna have open source helping others how to start Humble. So
I
it's all
love that.
available to you.
That is, from a business, like putting on my business owner hat, I love the fact that you essentially have like an SOP, standard operating procedure for like, here's how we open in a new market. Like, this is the process. Here are our needs. This is what you need to do. I love that because that is scale. Like, that's what's going to allow you to scale and allow others to participate in the mission and to really tap into as many markets as you can. So I think that's brilliant. And I think that a lot of organizations aren't like thinking proactively like that. We kind of are reinventing the wheel a lot. So I love that you've got that sort of SOP in place.
Well, I think that a lot of nonprofits do like a wide range. In fact, when their mission creeps, like it's large.
Yes.
We're so laser focused on what we
Mm-hmm.
do. There are a lot of moving parts to moving a house full of furniture 3 times a week in each city. Yes, and there's
Mm-hmm.
volunteers that we need to manage. But we are in 10 years from now, if you ask us what we do, we will be doing the exact same thing that we're
Mm-hmm.
doing now, unless of course we solve the problem of homelessness, and then I'll be out of business, which
That's the goal. Yes, that's the goal. It's so true. It's so true. I feel like a lot of organizations sort of follow the money. And if a funder's like, oh, I'm willing to fund part of this, but then you also have to do this other thing over here, we're like, oh, sure, that sounds good because it's money, but not all money is money that we want if it's distracting from, from
It's
our
true.
main goal.
And
Yeah.
also the people that are attracted to nonprofit work have a big heart, right? You're
Mhm.
not in nonprofit to make
True.
a buck, right?
Yeah.
So you're here because of the heart, and then you see, once you're in somebody's space, you see the need, and the need is greater. There's need for food insecurity. When we go into someone's space, there's need for educational items, there's need for cars, there's need for
Mhm.
transportation, there's need for excess funds for rent. So we could be dragged into markets because our heart pulls us. But I
True.
don't think that would, if my philosophy is that if we each take one small piece of the puzzle, we'll be much better off than trying to do the puzzle all alone.
Mhm.
So I'm going to do my part really well, and our part, and do my part of the puzzle, and hope that there are other people out there that are going to do their part of the puzzle really well too.
Mhm. I love that. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. I was going to ask, what's inspiring you right now? Either in your organization, in the nonprofit sector, in the world, what is lighting you up right now?
I It's not like in this exact second, it's kind of been like the last couple of years, is the
Yeah.
Dan Paletta view of
Mm-hmm.
nonprofit fundraising, and changing the narrative behind fundraising to one of, well, we're trying to solve the world's problems. Nonprofits are trying to solve the world problems. We've become a safety net where we probably shouldn't have, because the government has
Mm-hmm.
removed a lot of the safety nets. So we're trying to pick up the slack. And if you want the world's problems to be solved, you kind of have to invest in that. And
Mm-hmm.
so you want to draw the most important and smart and studied individuals to these huge problems. And so um, in this community of nonprofit, it's often looked at as a very poor taste to spend money on your employees. And we're supposed to do everything out of the kindness of our heart. And it's tacky when you pay somebody a lot of money to do something. But in doing that, we're creating a system by which we get a lot of people who are drawn with their heart to nonprofit and are expected to give up a living, a decent wage to do that. And I think that's the wrong approach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And I just recently watched Dan Pilato's TED Talk again, like 3 times in a row, because I'm like frantically taking notes through it so I can process. But I think his point that was so interesting, well, for me, of course, was the numbers, where he's like, yeah, we can spend, whatever, 50% of our money on fundraising, and then we're going to be able to raise like $40 million, or we can spend this tiny percent and only raise a tiny percent. And so what does this actually make sense? Do these numbers make sense? They really don't. And so, yeah, I think that's huge. And to anyone listening, if you've not watched Dan Pilata's TED Talk, highly recommend. Have you watched his documentary on, I don't know if it's on Netflix or where it is, Uncharitable? I've not watched that yet. Yeah.
I'm kind of I read his book, and like I'm kind of a freak about it. But he has changed the way that I speak to my board. He's changed the way
Mm.
that I write my thank you notes. Like if
Oh.
somebody donates money to the organization, we as nonprofits are usually like you said, we follow them like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. How can I steward this appropriately? What would you like in return for your money? How do you want to be represented? And we go and we have this posture back and forth of like, thank you so much. Well, I have taken on the new life outlook of saying you're welcome. Like I put my blood, sweat, and tears into
Mm.
starting this organization. So you can go to work and have a life and drive your kids to school and know that when you give to my organization, I am stewarding it with care for your community. So you're welcome. So I don't say that in
Mm.
those blunt terms, but like I want to
Yeah.
say when I write my thank you notes, is like, I'm so glad that you found our mission, that our mission resonates with you so much that you've invested this
Yes.
money in your community. And it's a big change. It's a big change in communication. So anybody who's in nonprofit, I try to get them to make this change, because if we all do it and we all start talking this way, that could make a big difference in the way that people view charitable giving.
Absolutely. I love that shift because that is something that everybody can do. Literally everyone listening, I'm sure, is acknowledging their donors and speaking to their donors. And by just making that shift in the way that you're speaking, I think you're right. Like it could change the sector. The sector needs to change. And so this one little shift could be part of that. I think that's so powerful. Okay. Need to add that documentary to my list of things to
So
watch.
it's so
Um,
good.
yeah, that's huge. And obviously like I'm always trying to shift the conversation when I'm teaching about financial management away from overhead and like, oh, what's a good percentage? What's a bad percentage? Where should we aim? And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to tell you what Charity Navigator is going to rate you on, but that is not the end all be all. This is not what we should be focusing on. You need to spend the money in the way that's going to help you have the greatest impact. And if that means you need to buy new computers for your staff because they're using 10-year-old ones that are broken and slow, then that's what you need to do. Then that's okay. But, at the end of the day, we're still sort of like governed by this archaic system that feels frustrating because our minds are sort of living in this one world, yet our financial statements are being judged in this other. It's
And
tricky.
Charity Navigator and those guide star have played a big part in that, right? So
Mhm.
for those of you listening who don't know, like you get a poor rating if you spend a lot on overhead, which means overhead. Let's just be clear: overhead is your employees, right?
Yeah.
So I have people who ask me how much of my donation is going to program and how much of my donation is going to overhead, and I go, well, okay, well, what is overhead? And they said, well, your office staff. I go, okay, so here's my office staff. This is David. David is our warehouse manager in Chicago. David is an amazing human being who stewards our mission with care, and he's been with us for a very long time. David is overhead. David should make a living wage, right? David should be able to pay his
Mhm.
bills, and his family should have food on the table, right? And
Mhm.
everyone's like, of course. And I'm like, okay, well, in Chicago, what do you think that means? What do you think that
Mhm.
salary should be? And whatever it is they guess, it's always over what we're paying. It's
Yes.
always over. And I'm like, okay, so let's be clear. David is, oh, sorry, David, if you're listening. David is overhead. And I don't think that you would want David to not have a dignified life. So it's shifting the conversation to talking about overhead, to talking about people and putting names to that, especially if you're a smaller organization, when somebody says like what's going to overhead, you go, oh, Sandy in the front office.
Right.
That is a shift. Like, oh, okay, yeah, I understand now. And that's a way that I can understand it. If you're talking to a corporation, a large corporation that just has to produce a CSR report and then wants to know what's going to overhead, that's different. But when you're talking to individual donors, I think that that's a really important conversation.
I love that. I'm sure, like, as you've had those conversations, you've definitely, I could imagine you've gotten people like, like, oh, should I not have asked that? Like, no, you shouldn't have asked that. No.
I love having the conversation because they'll never ask that same question again. They'll never walk into another nonprofit and be like, how much is my dollar is going to overhead? They'll never have, because it's embarrassing at the end. Like, oh, you mean this person sitting next to me who's working
right.
at the organization?
Yeah, this human being that needs to eat and have a place to live. Yeah, them. Um, okay, if anybody listening does this, I want to hear about it because I think this is huge. Again, little shift, and you need to have like kind of, I feel like could be slightly awkward conversation and because you're going to take people aback for sure. But if anyone does this, number one, I hope you do. Number two, I want to hear about it because this is a very powerful shift and I love that you do this. So good.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, the last question I have for you today, is what does a prosperous nonprofit look like to you?
Such a great question. So I love that we've served 10,000 people. And I love that we have so many stories and videos of kids crying at the side of their first bed and how like the ripple effect we'll never really understand. And I think that is a big part of my legacy and who I am and how I want to be remembered. However, when I walk into a warehouse in one of my cities and it is a buzz, and there's volunteers, and there's staff members, and there's people dropping off furniture, and there's people learning about the organization for the first time, and the phone is ringing, I almost burst into tears. And it is oh, listen, I burst into tears all the time. Clearly, I'm a nonprofit, but I really do find that the most emotional part, and it's not because so much of what that's going to translate into more families that we're going to help. It's because I feel a deep sense of peace that the world is going to be okay. That there's so many people who want to help and so many good people. And then I feel like when we turn on the TV and we're inundated with how awful the world is, I feel like the proof that that is absolutely not the case is when you stop and look around you at your own circle. And my circle happens to be thousands of volunteers who are drawn to this mission. And it gives me so much peace when I lay my head down on the pillow at night that if God forbid I get hit by a bus tomorrow, there will be an army of people to pick up where I left off, and who just want to do good for the world. And that's my truth. And that's my proof that the world's going to be okay.
That is beautiful. It's incredible.
So that's what I think a robust and successful organization is if you draw people to your mission and they're equally or more passionate about the mission than you are. Bravo. Yes. Sail off into the sunset. I mean, the best thing you can do is to train up people to do a better job than you did.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the legacy that I think as leaders, we all want to leave. It's like we like started the ball rolling and, now have built a community around us that are ready to carry that ball further than we ever could. So I think that's
founder syndrome is a real thing and it's really dangerous. And I try and avoid it, but I would love nothing more in this whole world for everyone to have as much passion and drive for the mission as I do. And that is what I found. I found a collective of people who feel the same way that I do, that they just want to help.
That is definitely prosperous. I would say that is a prosperous nonprofit. Fantastic. Well, listen, Humble Design has no shortage of video content that we can really experience your mission. And I've like binged a little bit. I was telling you before we started the call that every month my team has a monthly team call and we do a client spotlight where we highlight one of our incredible clients and share with the rest of the team a little bit about their mission. So our whole team got to watch one of your short videos, but I would love for you to tell us where where to find, where can we learn about Humble Design? Where can we watch some of these incredible stories of the clients that you work with? And if we want to learn more to support financially or otherwise, tell us where we find all the things, please.
Well, sure. So our website is humbledesign.org, which is a super easy way to click around and see a lot of the families that we service. But our social media accounts, so we have 6 social media accounts on most of the majority of the popular platforms. Facebook and Instagram tell our stories families each week. So we get, just so everybody knows out there, we get permission from our families to tell their story. And if they don't feel comfortable and they don't want to tell a story, we absolutely do not video them or photograph them. So every story that you see on our social media is a family that wants to tell their story. And we video them coming home, which is like the best part. And they cry and we yell, welcome home, and we hug, and they get to see their bed, and all the volunteers get to take moment just to look at the family that they've helped for the day. So it's a really lovely, emotional, like you said, video. So our social media is the best way to see those. Also, you and my mom both watched the TV show, so thank you for that. But we did have a TV show. We had 26 episodes. It was on the CW, and if you go right now, it's been syndicated by BYU. So it's on the website. You can click at the top. It's called Welcome Home TV. And it will take you to the BYU TV website where all of our episodes are there. I would bring a box of tissues with you because although it was children's programming, it is just a very heartwarming show. And I cried every week, so you can watch me have what my husband calls the peach pit of a chin, where right before I cry, my
Yeah.
peach pit, and I cry every week. So I love those videos, and I love watching them. And as many times as I've watched some of the more popular videos, we had one with like 20 million views of a little boy who saw his bed for the first time at Christmas and cried. As many times as I watch them, I still cry, and I think it's just the human condition to want to offer relief, and that's exactly what you see in those videos. Is a huge amount of relief.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so
Oh,
much
and
for
donate.
sharing.
Oh, please, and donate, and go on our website and donate, because we really, we as much as I sound like I know what I'm doing in fundraising, clearly every year we are fighting to make sure that we pay a living wage and keep our staff, in the 5 cities around. So 51 employees and 10,000 individuals. Your money will be stewarded with care.
Yes. And I think, one thing I've learned from another nonprofit friend is like, yeah, maybe we've got the money to fill our budget for this year, but we are trying to solve a very big problem. And so just because like, yeah, sure, we've raised the money that we need to this year, we are trying to solve a very big problem. And so the need for funds is endless. And we happen to be chatting on Giving Tuesday. This is not going to go live on Giving Tuesday, but we happen to be chatting on Giving Tuesday. And I'm going to go share your Instagram profile on my Instagram page.
Yeah,
Yes.
and it's a 1-to-1. So we know exactly how much money it is to furnish a home. So what we do is we take all the money that we spent over the year and we divide it by the number of homes that we have furnished. So it's a very real equation that you can know that if your company donates $5,000 to Humble Design, you are responsible for an entire family having a full house full of furniture. Beds, linens, electronics, TV, couches, rugs, everything that goes in your home goes in our home. So when you donate $5, $10, you know exactly what you're purchasing. And this year during Giving Tuesday, we are hoping to get the money in for enough beds for all of the children for next year. And like you said, we raise just enough money to break even every year. And it would be amazing if we could add on families. So even one more $5,000 donation will allow us to add another family onto that roster.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, so good. I'm looking at your Instagram page right now, and today's post, this Giving Tuesday, let's tuck kids into comfortable beds and dreams, not on the floor. No child should sleep on the floor. That is a very powerful Giving Tuesday campaign. Done sharing.
I mean, no matter what your views are on the world and on homelessness, like, can we all just agree that there is no child in the United States who should be sleeping, or in the world, but right now, in the wealthiest country in the world, there's no reason that a child should be sleeping on the floor.
Yeah. Agreed. Beautiful. Treger, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you sharing your journey, this incredible organization that you have built and grown, and the work that you're doing, and the stories of the families, the moms and dads and children that that Humble is helping. So thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you.
I don't know about you, but I had the best time. I could talk about Humble for years and years, but I had such a good time. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.